Hello everyone, welcome back to another SUPboarder video. My name is Ruben and I'm going to bring together the full review of the Starboard Ace Foil. Very exciting time for the SUP and foiling industry at the moment because we have got some new developments that are allowing us to get up on foil much earlier in lighter winds and in smaller waves, and that is due to these longer based boards. This is Starboard's Ace Foil. It's predominantly designed for downwind foiling, but you're going to see in this review there's more you can do with this board. As always guys, please like, comment, and of course if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, give it a subscription. There's loads of videos that go on there weekly. Right, back to the review. So this is the 2024 Starboard Ace Foil. It's been on the market for a few months now and we've been getting a fair amount of questions about it already. The board that we have been using is the 7 foot by 20 and that's 100 litres. The weight of this board when weighed 6.32 kilograms. And Starboard recommend a rider up to about 90 kilograms riding this. But you can find this in sizes 6'9" by 19 at 85 litres, the 7'4" by 21.5 at 120 litres, and the 7'10" by 23 at 140 litres. If you're just getting into foiling or you're not one of those super keen people that ends up searching every bit of foil content that's going on the web at the moment, you'll notice this board is a little bit longer than the boards that we have reviewed in the past. A lot of the boards now are going towards this longer waterline length. As you probably know from the paddleboard reviews we've done in the past, it's going to make it easier, give you more glide, give you more overall speed when you're actually off the foil. It is a fun and dynamic side of our sport and it is going to get a lot more people into foiling. This board, the Ace Foil, is all modelled off of an older downwind race board that Starboard had in their range for many years. You might have heard of the Ace board. That was a dugout, real open water bump catching machine. But now very much the new generation of downwinding is going towards foiling because foils are so efficient when you're on the foil, and that is why the Ace Foil has been born. The way I'm going to lay this video out is I'm going to talk about the design features that are on this board. Pretty much the same sort of stuff you can find on the Starboard websites and on other reviews. Then I'm going to dive into what this board was like for us to use it on flatwater foiling, downwind foiling in estuaries and open seas, surf, and looking at winging as well. Going to give you a good idea of what sort of rider could be using this board in those sort of conditions. And hopefully by the end of that, really give you a good understanding if the Ace Foil is a board that you should be looking at. Now out there, no doubt there will be a lot of you that have already been shopping around and looking for these types of boards, and you've realised that the Starboard board is hitting a very competitive price point, not only because it's from a main brand, but also because of its construction as well. This board is only available in its one construction, the blue carbon construction. That construction is a very tough and hard wearing board. We have been using this board pretty solidly over the last couple of weeks and the construction has really stood up well to it. You do also get a protective sock as standard with all of those boards, which is a really nice little feature. It's not a full-on padded bag, but then most of the time you just want to slip your board in that sock and put it in the back of the car or van. So let's have a look at some of the design features of this board, and let's start off with some of the design features that are very different from other boards on the market. First off, this board actually comes with foot strap inserts. It doesn't come with foot straps, you have to buy them as extras, but we very much will use foot straps in different conditions. Winging, a lot of the times we will use foot straps. Foil surfing, we will use foot straps. Pump foiling, we won't use them so much, but you have got the ability to put them on the board. Keeping a look at the deck of the board, there's quite a lot of design features that have gone on just in the deck area alone. So you've got a fairly large concave and recessed deck, which is obviously getting you lower to the water, giving you a bit more stability, getting you lower to the foil box as well, so you're more connected to the foil. The center of the deck, you've got a large raised EVA pad down the middle of the board, really great, allowing you to feel where your foot is on the board. The deck pad itself is a very, very grippy deck pad. So the lines are going from front to back on the front section, and then the red section, they're going across the deck pad. And then the back deck pad is your traditional crocodile skin, diamond gripped EVA deck pad with a raised EVA pad at the back there to put your foot against. The nice thing about the deck pad and the way they've laid them all out and the EVA strip down the middle is it does give you a really good reference point of where your foot is when you are foiling, because a lot of the time maybe if you're not that confident, you don't want to spend your whole time looking down at your feet. I mean, really doing any water sport, you don't want to be looking at your feet, you want to be looking ahead of you. So having all of that sort of grip and the layout really does help that. This board might be a light and easy board to carry, but they've still given you a really comfortable big recessed handle. The nose shape of the board in front of the deck, you will notice it looks a bit more like a mini race board. So if you do bury the nose or you do push your nose down, maybe when you're popping up and you're pumping up onto the foil when you're on the flat water, you'll notice the water will just shred off the side of the board and it doesn't run into the deck so much, so it reduces the amount of water you get into the deck. Even a little bit of a bump there does actually help that. So moving on to the outline shape, you'll notice it's a much longer, narrower baseboard, very efficient at traveling through the water, and they brought a nice pintail at the back of the board there. That helps out a few things. It helps for overall speed, but really it also helps for a bit of tracking as well. So it keeps the rails initiated and engaged all the way down right to the tail, helps a bit there for your straight line tracking. It's going to be interesting watching brands as they evolve their design shapes into the future. Who goes with the pintail, who goes with the square tail. Obviously they've got pros and cons to each of those things, but Starboard have gone for the pintail, and at the moment it does seem to be working very well, which we'll speak about in a minute. Got a fair amount of thickness still in the rails because this board is still 100 litres, so you've got to get a lot of volume really into a relatively narrow board. If we turn the board over, if we get our trusty straight edge up at the nose there, you'll notice there's quite a lot of roll, moving into a little bit of V or a little bit less roll. Moving back just past the Starboard logo, there's still a definite V in the center there, raising up, moving off to the sides, a very slight double concaves. So V in the center, slight concave either side. Moving back to the foil box, it's going to flatten off a little bit, but it's still got quite a lot of V there, a little bit flatter section by the foil box. And the back, it just carries on that same sort of shape. So what that bottom shape is obviously doing when you're paddling flat on the water, it's channeling the water a little bit either side of the V in the center and pushing it back towards the foil. But really the V in the center has got a bit more volume to help push you up and get you up onto the foil. Obviously when you touch back down again, having a bit more rocker there is going to help you, stop you from nose diving. And again, the V and the concave either side is just going to help push you back up and get you on foiling again. You'll see the rocker line shape of the board there with the side profile. There's a little bit of straightness in the midsection, but you've got a little bit of nose rocker, a little bit of tail rocker. It's just a combination of giving you as flat a board as possible so it paddles as quick as possible, but obviously not too flat so you do nosedive, or when you actually do want to lift up onto the foil, you can't actually initiate the foil either. So it's a finely tuned rocker line, they say. And the combination of the rails, you've got fairly soft rails right up the front, you've got slightly sharper rails at the back but still rounded at the sides, and then it rounds off a little bit more at the tail. So again, they're trying to give you ease so the board doesn't catch when you come back down, enough speed so when you're paddling you can get up onto the foil quickly, and obviously enough release so it doesn't drag when you are again trying to get up on foil. And the last thing we'll speak about before I turn it over is the foil box. It's a 16-inch foil box. The great thing about having 16-inch foil boxes or longer foil boxes is you can get away with more different types of foils. Obviously Starboard are going to want you to use a Starboard or an AK foil with their board, but you still can use other foils with this board as well. And also the foil box placement is not right at the back of the board. They brought it a little bit further forward, and that does actually give you a feeling of a slightly shorter board when you're up and riding, especially in the surf. But again, we'll speak about that in a minute. Okay, so we did try a few different foil brands, but for most of the time we were riding it with a Starboard Glide 1700 or 1100, and the stabilizer we used was a 250 Razor. Now we did notice and learn a lot about foil setup when we were riding this board over the last couple of weeks, and really it makes a big difference to your weight, the sort of conditions you're using it in, and also the size of stabilizer you're using with the board as well. So don't underestimate playing around with different stabilizers in the different sort of disciplines and the different sort of riding that you want to achieve with your board as well. So you've always got two elements to think about when it comes to foiling. You've got your foil setup and of course you've got your board. I'm now going to speak about the disciplines that we took these boards out in, give you pros and cons in each of those disciplines, and then maybe give you a summary of who will it best suit for those disciplines. First off, let's talk about what it was like to use for flat water foiling. So we're talking about paddling up onto foil. Now this is a side of a discipline that we're, to be honest, only just getting into. We didn't a month and a half ago. I've never done it. Will had never done it a month ago. So this board for Will especially was his first time he ever got up onto foil in flat water. The first thing we're going to speak about is the stability when you're standing on the water. I mean, you're getting on a board that's 20 inches wide. That's a very narrow board, but they're not hard to stand on because the foil really gives you a good amount of extra stability. Obviously, the wider base foils, which you're probably going to be using when you're paddling up on flat water, again, are going to make it even more stable. Definitely the bigger boards, 23 wide, they are going to take 100 kilo people. So that's the first thing we noticed. So paddling up onto foil and flat water was very achievable with this. Will did this, as I said, with his first ever session on this board, and he managed to get up onto foil after about 20 minutes of a few goes. But of course, remember, Will has got a very good paddling technique and he is used to paddling shorter base boards. This is the key here. You might have heard me say this in another video. Being able to paddle shorter boards in a straight line with a good amount of power is going to really help you paddle these type of boards up onto foil. But this board itself, it does seem to have a good amount of paddle speed to get up onto the foil, and it does seem to get up on foil fairly easy, and it does seem that that pintail really does help give you that straight line tracking. When you're up and you're pumping on flat water, because the foil box is a little bit further forward, you'll find that you're not having a massive board out in front of you when you are pumping. But because you've got a little bit of length there, it does actually help bring that nose down and get a bit more weight down to initiate that foil to carry on the pump. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as a really small sort of pump style board, but it's going to have pros and cons to that. For a start, if you do fall off the foil, you're still going to be able to paddle up and get back onto the foil again. Observations or negatives when paddling up on flat water? Well, as I said, remember, this is a very new side of the sport for all of us, to be honest. So the observations we found when paddling up on flat water, definitely foil setup is key. Making sure your foil is trimmed in the right place, making sure you have the correct size stabilizer and foil setup front wing for your weight. At the moment, we feel, our gut feeling is this board is more of a paddling board to get up onto the foil more than a pumping board with your legs. It did seem to achieve a better speed with fewer paddle strokes. So at the moment, I'm going to say it's more of a paddling based board than a pumping based board to get you up on flat water foiling. And the only other con or observation is that when you are using different foils, you might need longer foil bolts to put your foil on. So some of the other foils we tried, they all fitted with their current bolts, but they were a little bit short, and some other brands might not fit. So you might need to buy longer foil bolts if you're not using an AK or Starboard foil. Ability of rider, who should be looking at it for flat water foiling? Well, obviously you're going to be a good rider, good fitness and good paddling shorter base boards. Rider weights, this one definitely up to about 85 kilos. If you're heavier, you're going to be looking at the bigger boards, but really it's somebody who's very good with a good amount of paddle skills at paddling in a straight line. So now let's talk about downwind foiling, what the board is really designed for, and to be honest, what most of you are chatting about on social media that you're really wanting to do. You're wanting to try and go out and ride open ocean swells and link endless rides. Now we will say straight away that goal of the open ocean, linking those perfect 20-mile long rides is actually quite a challenge, and it's something you have to build yourself up to. This board is going to do it absolutely fine, but at the moment what we're really enjoying and we find much easier, and I think we should really encourage you all to go into, is getting on rivers, estuaries and lakes and downwinding in those conditions. This board, you do not need very much wind, you do not need very much chop to get up on foil. It's so much more of an enjoyable experience because you've only got one direction of sort of wind chop. You haven't got any side chop maybe coming off the coast like you would do out in open oceans. It's a much easier way to learn downwinding, and to be honest, it's much safer, and logistically it's much easier to organise as well. So downwind foiling in estuaries, this board is very comfortable, very easy. A few paddle strokes, catches the smallest of bump. If you're obviously good at getting yourself up onto foil, you're going to have no problem at riding this board. Any cons or negatives? Well, I'm not going to give you any cons and negatives in those types of disciplines. The board does handle itself in the really rough stuff, and it's very easy to get up on foil for your first downwind sessions in rivers, estuaries and lakes. Ability of rider, well, still similar as to flat water paddling. You're still going to have to know how to initiate that board up onto foil. You're still going to have to be able to paddle fast in a straight line, but you don't need to put as much effort in as you would do on flat water paddling. Now let's talk about surf. This is a discipline that really these types of boards are not designed for, but we've already seen a lot of you are getting into surf using these longer base boards, and we can see why. For a start, you catch the wave so much earlier than you would do on your more traditional 5'5", 5'8" surfing foil SUP. Therefore, if you're catching a wave in a river mouth or it's not even breaking, these types of boards are going to get you up on foil so much earlier, or maybe just get you up on foil opposed to you not getting up on foil. The way that these boards come up onto foil is a much more gentle experience compared to the more traditional SUP foiling boards. So you haven't got to pop up and initiate the back leg so much. You pretty much just paddle, get a little bit of glide speed, and then the foil just comes up. Definitely that sort of foiling is going to really help you if you're a heavier base rider. You're going to be able to catch smaller waves, you're going to be way further out back, so it is going to get a lot more of you into the SUP surf foiling. What is it like when you're actually riding it? Is it a really big and chunky board to pump and use around in the surf? Well, actually it's not. It actually does feel fairly comfortable. Just like the flat water pumping, it has got a nice pump, so if you're pumping between waves, and where they put the foil box does make your board feel a little bit shorter than being 7 foot long. But the nice thing we noticed in the surf is when you do touch down, the board seems to have a very smooth entry to where it touches down, and that's obviously to do with the nose shape and the rail shape there. And if you wanted just a few paddle strokes, you can just pop back up again. So again, very different compared to the much shorter, fatter based SUP surf foil boards. They require a lot more of an explosive power to get up, maybe a lot more trim with your back foot and your foil. This is a much more laid back style of riding, but you still can throw the board around. We've seen very good SUP foilers out there throwing these length of boards around in the surf. I think definitely tuning your foil setup will get you a good amount of performance in that. Obviously, if you want to get in the really tight critical sections of the wave, getting on a shorter board will be better. But for a lot of you out there, this length of board getting into the surf will be a really good move. Any cons or negatives? Well, the biggest one probably is to do with the type of wave you're going to be SUP foiling in. As I said, it really works well on the slow waves that maybe aren't even going to break. If you end up catching a wave that's much later or much deeper, you've obviously got more nose there to make sure you don't nosedive, so you're going to have to be a bit more on it. So definitely when you're lower level or you're more of an entry SUP surfing foiler, getting out on those flatter gentler bumps is much easier with this type of board. Another observation is foil wise. Remember, if you drop to smaller front foils, you're going to reduce the stability of this board. So a lot of you who are SUP surfing are on much smaller foils than you would be using if you are downwind foiling or pump foiling. Well, you jump on a narrower base foil. Remember, then you will feel you're more on a 20 wide board. And maybe that's where you're better off going to a shorter, wider base board. Who will it be best for? Ability of rider in the surf. Well, I think you could be getting into the surf as a beginner with this board, but remember, a wider base foil with a bit more glide will give you a bit more stability. The heavier base riders, I think you're really going to get a lot out of this board because you're going to get on the foil way earlier. And if you're by a local river mouth where you've got a small bump out where you paddle, this board will work very well. Now let's talk about winging. So this is probably one of the disciplines that we underestimated a little bit. We did understand that this board was going to get up on foil earlier than our shorter, wider base wing boards because it is much longer, but we didn't really think about how early we were getting up. I think Will was getting up in about 5 knots. And that wasn't with a dramatic amount of pumping, a little bit of pumping, but really letting the board gather the glide and let the foil initiate. Very different from the, I was going to say old style of winging, but shorter base winging boards where you have to sort of pump and trim, squat your back foot down and get that foil to initiate and trim it up and get up on the foil and start pumping and away you go. That sort of foiling is a little bit more technical, definitely, than this base foiling in lighter winds. This is really sheet in, feel the power in the wing and let the board do the rest. So no doubt it is a light wind weapon, yes, but also I think for a lot of you, unless you are busting freestyle moves and really trying to do rotations or maybe trying to get again in the more critical surf with your wing, this sort of length of board is still going to work absolutely fine. It's not going to be a slow board, it still can be just as fast as your other boards. Yes, maybe you have a little bit of more extra windage if you really want to get technical about it, but for a lot of you out there, if you're flat water blasting, this length of board is a very smooth and easy board to use. Also, if you're going upwind and you've got a fairly big mast on your foil, you can really crank the board over and just charge upwind. I don't know why the length of the board makes it feel like it can go upwind more, but it does feel that it will just keep on going. Again, with your pumping in lighter winds, because it's got a little bit more length there up at the nose, it feels like that little bit of length just helps you initiate the pump, and then eventually you almost forget about your wing and you think you are flat water pump foiling but just holding on to a wing. So you can keep the board going in even lighter winds than the winds you first got up in. So any negatives or things you're going to notice when you first get on this board winging? Well, you are going to notice the difference in the width compared to your shorter, wider base boards, especially if you're going to be using it with a smaller, faster foil. Therefore, these boards will still work better in lighter winds because you're going to have those bigger foils, which are going to give you more stability. Also, when you're jibing and moving your feet around, because you've got less width of the board, you've actually got less of the board to basically trim and move your feet around. So you are going to have to get used to that. That's nothing that's hard. You're just going to definitely notice the board feels physically narrower, which it is compared to the wider base boards. But really, once you've got used to the reduction in width and obviously having a little bit longer board compared to your traditional wing foiling boards, there isn't many drawbacks to this board, especially when using it in lighter winds. Ability of rider, who could be using it as a winger? Well, I do think you could get into winging as a beginner on this board. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit of balance to get yourself literally just onto the board, and holding the wing, again, having a bigger foil will really help that. But when you start just moving with your wing, I would actually say it's actually easier to use this board than a shorter, wider base board. It's very smooth and very effortless to get up on foil, as I said. But for all you riders who email us, who are 85 to 110 kilos in the heavier weight bracket, and you want a board to get up in lighter winds when you're winging, these are the boards you should be looking towards. So there we go, some of our feedback there from the disciplines we've been using this board in. Any other things I need to note out or any pros I want to bring in again? Well, definitely the value for money is a really big one, and a lot of you have already been commenting on email about this board looks like a lot of value, and it is a lot of value, and it's very well made. The deck pad and the sort of deck geometry is really nice. We haven't used a lot of other downwind boards, but it's very comfortable. And having the ability to have foot straps on here is actually a really good move as well. The board weight doesn't actually weigh that much either, even though you've got foot strap inserts. Looking at the bottom of the board, we really like the large foil box that Starboard have put on this board. It's going to work with, I would say, most foil brands, which is going to be a great thing. You don't just want to have to buy into one board and have to change your whole foil range just because of that board. And again, I'm going to draw out, if you're using these boards with wider base foils, the amount of stability you get from these is unreal. So yes, this is a 20-inch wide board and it's only 7 foot long, but it doesn't feel like a 20-inch wide board when you're riding it. If you compare this to a normal sort of composite paddleboard, it probably feels like you're standing on more like a 29 or 30-inch wide paddleboard. So you've got a lot more width there than your 20 inches, which is what's stated. I really hope you found this review interesting and informative. I hope it's giving you a good idea of if this board is right for you and the disciplines you could be using the Ace Foil board in. The guidance on the rider weights does seem to be pretty good on the Starboard website, so definitely check out that for more information. If you would like to see us perform a SUPboarder Pro test with a lot of other brands head to head to see which of these boards is best, because I think you're all going, yes please, I would like to see that, because we would definitely like to see that. I think we should be trying to pull that together, because it could be a very interesting test if we get maybe 5 or 6 of the brands and put them into one video to see which ones work best maybe in certain disciplines and which ones don't work best in certain disciplines. As always, any comments, please get them in the comments section below. I'd love to know if you've used this board, the thoughts around this board, anything to do with this board. I know other people would like to see it as well. Give this video a like if you found it useful. Please give us a subscription on YouTube, and if you want more SUPboarder content, remember to sign up to SUPboarder Pro, and you can also check out Will's first ever SUP foiling experience with this board on there as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another video soon.